This is your reality check.
Hi everyone, and welcome to The Reality Check, your weekly Canadian show that explores a wide range of controversies and curiosities using science and critical thinking. This is the show for August 16th, 2016, and I'm your host, Darren McKee. With me, as usual, are Adam Gardner.
What's up, Rioids?
Christina Roach.
Hello.
And producer Pat.
Hi, everybody.
As usual, we have a great show for you. Pat is going to give us a game of Name That, and Adam is going to explore whether air conditioning is sexist.
That's right.
But first, the 2016 Olympics. What's up with that? In case you haven't heard, the 2016 Olympic Games are happening in Rio, or just have happened when you hear this. Mm-hmm. Kudos to that special listener that happens to listen to this podcast but didn't know the Olympics was going on.
Wow.
Yeah. My first question for my fellow Canadian co-hosts is if you know how Canada is currently doing in the medal rankings. Adam?
Like, the women are doing quite well, but specifically, like, golds versus total medals. Canada's number 2, but that depends how you count them. If you do a 3-2-1 gold, silver, bronze thing, I think they'd be second.
Pat and Christina?
So the women are doing better than the men, but I certainly don't think that we're second overall.
No.
But I can't say that I know for sure.
Yeah, neither do I. I know we've won a few medals, and I know some of the names of the athletes, but I don't know what the count is at this point.
Right. Total medal count, who would you guess are the top 3?
U.S.?
Yeah.
I was going to say Canada, but Pat seems to think that's not the thing.
You still can.
I don't know, Australia, Germany, I don't know.
Well, it's deceiving because all we watch is Olympics. All I'm hearing is about Canada, but in another country, all they're hearing about is their country winning medals.
Right.
So it's a little bit deceiving.
So 1, 2, 3, wild guess, the U.S. probably leading for certain, France and Germany.
If you're curious, total medal count at the moment, United States is leading with 75, then China with 46, then Great Britain with 41, then Russia with 36, then Japan, then France, then Italy, then Germany, then Australia, then South Korea, then Canada with 13.
Yeah, go Canada.
We're 11th. Nailed it. But that's the number of absolute medals, isn't it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. It is interesting we use this metric when we often don't use such a metric in many other domains.
We only use this metric if this metric makes our country look better.
Well,
generally.
To be fair, in sports, they often use an absolute number. Total number of home runs and that sort of thing.
Sure.
But often, in other realms of society, we care more about the rate of things. Rate of homicides, say, than an absolute number. The rate of bike accidents, the rate of obesity, the rate of cancer. Is this stuff going up? Is it going down?
Sure.
Or even how many products happen to be sold in a particular country. To say that more phones are sold in one country than another really doesn't mean anything without some sort of population comparison, or what is known as the per capita amount. Fortunately for us, others felt the same way and created a website called medalspercapita.com. So per capita, number 1 is Grenada.
Good job, guys.
With 1 medal.
And girls.
For 106,000 people. Second is Bahamas with 1 medal for 388,000 people.
Yeah.
And third is New Zealand with 9 medals for 4.5 million people.
Well, that's not bad, because then the noise is kind of going away. They're legitimately doing well per capita.
Right. And actually, that's 500,000 people approximately per medal.
Wow.
Then you have Jamaica, Slovenia, Bahrain, Denmark, Hungary, and Fiji. You'll notice none of these were in that other list. Now, this website also used something suggested by the New York Times, which is a weighted count, with gold that counts as 4, silver counts as 2, and bronze as 1.
Okay.
Now, one could quibble about how much more a gold is worth. Like, I'll trade you this gold for 4 bronzes. You're like, nah, I'll keep that gold.
Yeah, I've heard a 3-2-1. I've heard a 5-3-1. You're talking about a 4-2-1. This is obviously...
So when they say weighted medals, that's how suddenly Grenada now has 2 versus 1.
Yeah.
Because it was a silver.
They should just make the actual medals way more. And they'd be like, they have 17 pounds of medals.
That's funny. So in this sense, the weighted medals, using, again, the population per weighted medal now, number 1 is still Grenada.
Good job.
This is now...
Good job, guys.
A population per weighted medal gives them 53,000. So every 53,000 people, they got a weighted medal, which is kind of weird to phrase it because there's still only 1 medal. They'd have to cut it in half. Then there's the Bahamas, also number 2. Then New Zealand, which is, again, you'll notice the same. Then the next ones, Fiji, Bahrain, Jamaica, Hungary, Slovenia, Denmark, are very similar to the previous list, although slightly differently ordered.
Are we higher than 11th in any of these other weird ways?
Oh,
of
no,
measuring?
much worse.
Oh, really?
This is when the States drops down to like 30th, 50th, or 60th,
Yeah,
as
they
do
have
we.
a huge population.
Exactly. So here, just for example, before New Zealand had, as I said, a count of 9, and now they'd have 24 under this weighted medal. Right, just to
How's
get the
China
sense.
doing in there?
China's not there either. Now, population is important to take into account. And I'm not sure, but I think we can maybe assume talent is approximately evenly distributed. So if you had more people in your country,
Yes.
you'd have more talented people. Now, of course, there'll be some sports that align better with some body types. That's just the nature of the world. But all that sort of aside, or keeping that in mind, it's also true that some countries are richer than others. And so does that matter? Well, they actually have a weighted GDP medal count as well.
wow.
Number 1, Grenada. Their GDP is not so high, so they're number 1. Fiji is number 2, which was also in that list. North Korea comes in at number 3, because their GDP isn't that high, and they have a
job,
decent
guys.
medal count. Then Jamaica, Bahamas, Kenya, Mongolia, Bahrain, and Uzbekistan. Again, your familiar friends in that list.
So this is only with GDP or GDP and population?
Good question, Adam. No, it is just GDP.
Oh, okay.
So I actually was just about to say, this really doesn't get at how much money there would have been available per person. So perhaps we need a GDP and a population
But
measure.
GDP also scales to population.
Yeah, broadly.
Generally,
Surely.
yeah.
Now, of course, that would be the broad sense, but I mainly want to know is how much each team got in funding and support. That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah.
Now, the website doesn't quite have that, but they do have weighted medals by team size. So this is just taking into how many people are actually going towards the Olympics as part of your team.
yeah.
It's somewhat comical. Like, say, for example, the team size of the United States is 554 people, when Grenada sent 6. So ranking country by weighted medals per 100 athletes, even if they don't have 100 athletes, obviously they're doing fractions here.
Yeah.
Kosovo is number 1. North Korea is number 2. Grenada is number 3. United States is 4. Then Great Britain, similar to the actual total medal count. Vietnam, then China, Hungary, and Ethiopia. Because they're just sending so many people and they're winning so much.
Yeah.
All that to say, I think many measures of Olympic glory are hard to measure. I think it is largely comes down to a personal choice. Like, what do you actually care about? Some people might care only about excellence. Show me excellence, show me the best. I don't care how many people they came from or how much money it costs to train that person. Well, others might care about some sort of level playing field. When I hear stories of some teams having pretty much no equipment, not sophisticated training, not state-of-the-art materials, it does seem a bit unfair. So what exactly are we trying to assess here? Again, this is a bit of a personal question. So what do you guys think? Should we be assessing overall excellence, or do you think, well, as long as people have approximately equivalent training and opportunity, then it's more of a fair game?
Well, I mean, you can't exactly take away training. Training is so much about what makes someone great, especially at certain sports. Like your gymnastic ability is going to have, to some extent, have to do with your innate ability. It's your coach, it's your training, it's the work you put into it. And some of that is money, and some of that is effort and sweat, right? So, how do you really tease that apart? It doesn't really matter what kind of shoes you have or what kind of leotard you have or whatever these people have. I don't know. Does that make sense?
It does. It might depend on like which sport, right? Because winter
Yeah.
sports typically are dominated by the rich countries for somewhat
true.
obvious reasons. There aren't that many ski hills to practice on in Chad.
And, well, we do well in winter sports because it's Canada. It's cold here.
So Pat and Christina, do you think it's more about excellence, or maybe we should think about what actually led someone to maybe have an advantage over someone else?
I mean, the way I see it is countries competing, and some countries may have larger populations, may have more advantages in terms of finances. But I think the spirit of the games is countries competing against one another. I don't really think we need to change it.
It's always really fun when you see someone who's from a disadvantaged situation
Totally,
win
it's
a gold
awesome.
medal.
It's awesome when it happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Pat, do you have something for us?
All right, here we go with another edition of everyone's favorite mostly guessing game, Name That. This week we played Name That, the Olympics edition. It's a shorter game today. We have 3 questions with a tiebreaker question if required. As usual, I'll give you a piece of information and then ask you to name that from the choices provided. We'll rotate the order and have randomly chosen who will go first. Question number 1. Christina, name that. How much actual gold is in a gold medal? A, 100%, B, 50%, C, 25%, or D, less than 5%?
I'm going to go with C.
Next is Darren.
I'll pick 50%.
Darren says B. And lastly, Adam.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to assume it'd be so high. Oh, it's got to be like a 20 carat or a 14 carat. But the cost of that gold would be intense. I'm going to go with less than 5, D.
Yeah, actually, Adam made a good point.
So Adam goes with D, and Adam is correct.
Damn it. I was
Damn
going to
it.
say D.
I didn't think that through.
Today, gold medals are more than 95% silver.
Yeah.
If the Olympics were to make the medals entirely of gold, each medal would require more than $21,000 worth of the material.
Wow.
Based on current gold and silver prices, the 494 grams of silver and 6 grams of gold in the medals would cost $587, which means Michael Phelps' entire 23 gold medal collection would be worth just over $13,000.
So, Pat, does that mean the silver ones are made of bronze and the bronze ones are made of peanuts?
Actually, the bronze ones are made of bronze, and I don't know what the silver ones are made of. They're probably still made of silver, actually. Yeah. Question number 2. Darren, name that. When were women first allowed to compete in the Olympics? A, 1900, B, 1928, C, 1948, or D, 1956?
I hope, 1928.
Darren says B. Next is Adam.
I've seen this meme on the internet where they do like Olympics then and now. There's like someone doing gymnastics.
The
in
gymnastics
50s
one, yeah.
Compared to now. But I can't remember the year. So I'm going to say 1948, which is B?
C.
C, 1948.
Adam says C. And lastly, Christina.
I'm going to go with C. That's 48, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So Christina agrees with Adam, and the winner of this question is Pat.
Boo.
Women first competed in the 1900 Paris Games, and they were allowed to participate in tennis and golf. Question number 3. Adam, name that. Which sport made its debut this year at the 2016 Summer Olympics in Rio? A, bowling, B, squash, C, rugby sevens, or D, surfing?
I don't know what a rugby sevens is. Squash is so not new. Like, that should have been introduced in like 1982. Bowling, I can't imagine. So I'm going to say surfing, D.
Adam says surfing. Next is Christina.
I'm going to say C.
Christina says rugby sevens. And lastly is Darren.
Yeah, I don't know what rugby sevens is either. I like the idea that surfing's in there, or if it wasn't, it now suddenly is. So I'm going to say surfing.
And Christina is correct.
I've never seen rugby in the Olympics before. This is the first year I can remember. That's why I guessed it.
Oh, it helps if you probably watch the Olympics.
Rugby sevens is a variant of rugby union in which teams are made up of 7 players playing 7-minute halves instead of the usual 15 players playing 40-minute halves. None of the other choices given are currently Olympic sports.
Oh,
So we have a tie between Adam and Christina with 1 point each.
sweet.
Tiebreaker question. You're out of this one, Darren. The first Olympic Games were held in 1776 BC in Olympia, Greece. Christina, name that. Which Greek god were they held in honor of? A, Apollo, B, Athena, C, Hercules, or D, Zeus?
Oh, man. I feel like I should know this. I'm going to say D.
Christina says D, Zeus. Next is Adam.
Yeah, I'm not sure the year count makes much sense if there was no year 0. I want to say Apollo because I think I've seen like a statue of him where he's holding the little discus, which I think was an Olympic thing, tossing the discus, you know.
And Christina wins the game.
Oh,
the answer is
yes.
D. The original Olympic Games were held in honor of the Greek god Zeus. Congratulations, Christina.
Woohoo. Do I get a medal?
It's been so hot in Ottawa lately, many people have been running their air conditioners. But Adam, is there some sort of downside to this? Are they sexist?
Good question, Darren. I fell upon a funny meme online. It referenced articles talking about sexist air conditioners and featured an image of a window air conditioning unit with a word bubble coming out, and it was expressing a sexist phrase towards women. Arguably funny, but it made me wonder what this was all about. So I went down a rabbit hole, which I found might be interesting to cover on the show. Sexism in this case isn't about overt intended mistreatment of women, but then most everyday sexism, which permeates in our society and actually has a real negative impact on women is usually more subtle and unintended. And so it is with office temperature wars where men are seemingly comfortable but women freeze in this environment that is maladapted to them. So one of the first things I saw talking about this, bringing it into the public sphere, was a Washington Post article from July 2015. It wasn't huge on research, and it had informal surveys of women and men asking if they were cold. There was a big focus on clothes. In many offices, men wear business suits while women adjust their way of dressing to suit the summer. The author blames men for wearing suits, suggesting alternatives despite the business suit in her avatar image. This depends entirely on work environments, of course. I wear long-sleeve shirts year-round, but some of my coworkers wear golf shirts in the summer. I know quite a few people who are required or strongly expected to wear ties and long-sleeve shirts year-round, while some jobs expect or require a suit. How do you guys dress at the office?
Lots of people work from home.
Well, I
Track pants.
your onesie or your snuggly?
Basketball shorts and cut-off T-shirts.
Yeah, pretty much.
it's not bad.
I work in an office somewhat similar to Adam. Typically dress pants and long sleeve shirt, sometimes with a tie. In the summer, I can get away with a short sleeve shirt, a polo, and once or twice on a casual Friday, I've risked shorts. But in the many years, it's a very rare occurrence.
I risk jeans, but I've never risked shorts.
Yeah.
So.
I'm bold that way.
Yep. So there are differences in expected attire for men and women. This is a reality. Men may not always have the option to dress down. Putting something on to warm up is an option, but that may have limited value. Is it right to even suggest that someone put something on if they're uncomfortable? There's no perfect answer to these kind of questions. I'm not here to take down workplace dress codes, but let's just accept that dress codes and social expectations on how to dress exist for men and women alike, and this is a complicated issue. So there's no logical, determined answer to this question. That's sort of a values answer, but that's something that's going to factor into this. So, what does the science say on this topic? Attire aside, is there a difference between what men and women prefer as an average temperature? Important to note, of course, is that when I'm speaking about differences between men and women, I'm talking about the averages. There are differences in large groups, but individual members will always vary. Just like some women may be taller than some men, we may find some women who like it hot and men who like it cold, but we want to look at the aggregate when we deal with such issues to find what our average difference is. One question we can ask is whether or not there's a difference in core body temperature. In the early 90s, physicians at the University of Maryland School of Medicine found that women's body temperatures were about 1.7 degrees Celsius or 0.3 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than men's on average. In 1998, researchers at the University of Utah observed a 0.2 degrees Celsius difference or a 0.4 degree Fahrenheit difference. So they had women at 36.6 degrees Celsius or 97.8 degrees Fahrenheit and men at 36.3 degrees Celsius or 97.4 degrees Fahrenheit. However, they found that hand temperatures were significantly different. Men's hands were 32.2 degrees Celsius, or 90 Fahrenheit, while women's were 30.6 degrees Celsius, 87.2 Fahrenheit. A significant difference in temperature, which can't be resolved by simply bundling up unless you're wearing gloves. If you have a typing job or something, this isn't really a practical suggestion. So there's a very small difference between the actual body temperatures of men and women, but the differences don't stop there. A person's body temperature can vary throughout the day and with other factors from day to day. Women's body temperatures can vary with their menstrual cycle. It rises sharply after ovulation. Menopause can also be a factor. Hormonal contraceptives tend to raise a typical body temperature by about 0.6 degrees Celsius, that's 1.1 degrees Fahrenheit. And body temperatures can rise after eating or mild exercise, and average body temperatures and daily variability will decrease with age. So, overall, what accounts for differences in men and women's body temperatures? So men and women aren't carbon copies of each other. Sexual dimorphism is a real thing in humans. There are some differences. And one big issue here is size. Some women can be bigger than some men, but on average, men are taller and bigger than women. So for example, according to the European norm, which is used for sleeping bag comfort levels, a standard 25-year-old man is 5'8" and 161 pounds. A standard 25-year-old woman is 5'3", 132 pounds. If this sounds low, that's because it is, and it varies by country. In the US, average male weight is 194.7 pounds, while female weight is 164.7 pounds. Either way you cut it, there's a difference of roughly 30 pounds, more or less. This can vary a bit from country by country, but it's in that ballpark. Men are generally larger than women. And as we saw in our coverage of the Science Behind Godzilla segment from an earlier episode, larger animals gain and lose heat more slowly than smaller ones. So an elephant has a harder time managing its heat than a mouse, for example. And this has to do with a smaller surface area to volume ratio. But more distinguishes men and women than simple size, though that's a factor. Women tend to have more body fat than men, and body fat holds heat, but it doesn't do a good job of holding heat in the extremities. So that explains why women's hands may be colder. And even if that fat holds in some heat, additionally, muscle is better at generating heat, and men generally have more muscle. A Canadian researcher, Peter Tuckwisis, did experiments by dunking men and women into cold water and monitoring their body temperature via a rectal thermometer. So being dunked in cold water was possibly not the most unpleasant part of this experiment. Now, he found that cold responses related only to body fatness and the ratio of body surface area to size, and that gender did not actually factor into it. So practically, how does this translate into comfort levels at different temperatures? So researchers at Texas Tech University's Department of Industrial Engineering compared 31 males to 15 female subjects at a variety of temperatures. They found that males preferred a temperature of 22 degrees Celsius, that's about 71.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Females preferred a temperature of 25 degrees Celsius, 77.1 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a pretty big difference.
No kidding.
Females were more uncomfortable than males at low and high temperatures, and subjective estimates were also found to relate to actual changes in body temperature and heart rate. Basically, no one's exaggerating their perceived comfort level, that it's really reflected in something biological, some reality there. So men and women are comfortable at different temperatures, and this is a completely legitimate thing. So then we have to ask ourselves the original question, is air conditioning sexist? And that depends on who sets it, what was in mind when it was set, and what it's set to. Ranges seem to vary from workplace to workplace. The U.S. Department of Labor suggests between 68 degrees Fahrenheit and 76 degrees Fahrenheit. Since they're American, they use Fahrenheit. That's 20 degrees Celsius to 24.4 degrees Celsius. This is close to the preferred male temperature. The Canadian occupational health and safety temperatures vary by humidity level and season, but basically in summer it varies from 23 degrees Celsius to 28 degrees Celsius, that's 74 Fahrenheit to 82 Fahrenheit, and in winter from 20 Celsius to 25.5 degrees Celsius, or 68 Fahrenheit to 78 Fahrenheit. So it's warmer than women are comfortable with in the summer, but it seems to fit within the range of both in the winter. So much to say, many people feel that the temperature in their offices are based on standards set by men sort of back in the day. No doubt this is going to be true in a lot of offices, but it's not going to be true in all of them. The breakdown of men and women in an office and whose word will be followed by what temperature is going to be set is going to be a complicated issue wherever you go. So if you find yourself in a situation of having control over office temperatures, just be aware of what that means and how you should be respectful and welcoming to everybody in the workplace. You shouldn't be saying, well, there's only 3 women and there's 30 guys, so we want to set it so the guys are comfortable. Well, you're being kind of a jerk if you're doing that. How it's set and how it should continue to be set is something that's going to evolve with the workforce as things change. Also, think about who sets the thermostat in your home. This isn't always going to be something that's only going to relate to the workplace. Try to be sensitive as to who's in your home. If there's sort of a disagreement over whether it's too hot or too cold, there's probably factors that are not just someone being a little picky. This is a biological issue here. So we're left with some fairly subjective questions. Is it better to have half of the people to be too hot or half of them be too cold? I'd rather be a couple of degrees too cold than too hot, but I'm not really keen on either. But I understand that as a man who benefits from a climate that seems mostly suited to my need, that this will go against what women in my office might want. Is it okay to tell someone to put on a sweater? Is the equivalent to ask someone who's overdressed to wear less also okay? Well, there's no right or wrong answer to these questions, but, it's not always great to tell someone what to wear. Is air conditioning sexist? A bit of a subjective question. Men and women are comfortable at different temperatures, and some offices are set to a temperature that the average man will find comfortable, but that the average woman will find cold. There's no right answer as to what the temperature should be, but we should strive to factor in the comfort levels of all employees when determining these kinds of numbers.
Great stuff, Adam. It's a good coverage of a complex issue. Certainly when it's really hot in the summer, almost everyone wants air conditioning. But you're right, it's like, at what level, though?
Sure.
It's not that air conditioning itself is sexist, it's the amount, it seems. Yeah. I also think it's interesting there's a bit of a double whammy where, first, there's a biological preference, which seems to be different on average, as you said.
Yep.
But then, if men dressed like women with bare shoulders,
Oh, yeah.
that'd be mostly unacceptable in most workplaces. So you have A, the biological difference, and then B, the social difference where women can wear less and more. And if you're, say you happen to wear a tank top as a man, which you're not allowed to wear in the first place, you're like, I'm just going to put a shawl on top. It's like, you're not allowed to do that either. Not allowed, but it would be seen as odd in our society. So it's a interesting sort of double whammy effect.
And also there's cultural differences. I know some of our son's friends who are Caribbean. I mean, James will joke about being at a friend's house and he's wearing a sweater and jeans, and James is dying in, shorts and a t-shirt. So
yeah, there's definitely a comfort level based on sort of what you're used to as the temperature in the country you come from. I recognized that in school. There were a lot of Somalian students in my class, and I'd be like, it's the middle of summer, you're wearing pants, aren't you hot? And I'm like, no, it's a cold day.
Thank you for joining us once again. I talked to you about how medals could be counted in different ways to be a bit more fair in these Olympics. Pat gave us a little game of Name That, Olympic edition. So gold medals aren't as pricey as you thought. And Adam looked into whether air conditioning is sexist. And the answer is not objectively so, but it could be said at a certain point that privileges one group over another. Mm-hmm. Until next time, think better to act better.
Peace out, Rioids.
stay classy, not smartassy.
Good night, everyone.
For show notes or to discuss this episode, visit our Facebook page and website at trcpodcast.com. For general inquiries or to send a topic or parody suggestion, email info@trcpodcast.com. Help support the show by leaving a review on iTunes and liking us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at TRC_podcast.
Outtakes.
Upon reflection, I gave a lot of stupid answers.
The problem is that some like it hot, but they sweat when the heat's on.
He's referencing a song, I assume.
I assume it is a song. One question we can one
Sorry,
question.
Have it out.
No problem.
Okay, let's get through the show.
Do it. Just do it, Adam. Do it.